You're listening to Power Athlete Radio, a podcast dedicated to empowering your performance every damn day. Join former NFL pro and Power Athlete founder John Welborn as he dissects the greatest minds in strength, conditioning, and more. So whether your goal is to be the hammer, destroy mediocrity, or simply move the dirt, you've come to the right place. Now with the warm-up done, let the gains begin.
Welcome to another episode of Power Athlete Radio. I'm John Welborn, and I'm joined today by my good friend, Mr. Bobby Williams, CEO, creator, and founder of Stratosphere. And I had the opportunity to go to Southern California, and this was actually after the fires, and then work my way through what looked like a war zone, and ended up working down into beautiful Malibu, onto PCH, into one of the coolest buildings that I've ever seen that sits right on PCH, kind of nestled in this corner. And we end up going in. There are these big palatial doors open up, and we get a chance to see Stratosphere. So I wanted to introduce you guys to Bobby and also talk a little bit about his technology, his personal journey, but really get into the science on this thing because it's like nothing I've ever seen.
Cool. Yeah, man. Thank you for having me on, John. It was a pleasure having you over at the building off of PCH after the aftermath of the worst fires in the history of the United States, actually, because of the double towns that went up. Stratosphere, yeah, man, it's a bit of an anomaly. It's been around for a long time, the elevation part of training. They have a similar mechanism for astronauts and fighter pilots, but it's never been used, publicly. And working with Dr. Bruce Johnson of the Mayo Clinic, we figured out oscillations and fidelity of the oscillations in the fast ascents and descents based on one's physiology gives you an enormous amount of health benefits. EPO triples after about 3 sessions. We were able to move the needle on VO2 max, even if you're maxed out, raises testosterone. The headspace part is pretty profound. There's more going on in the brain than there is with the physiological effects that we're discussing. According to physiologists that I'm working with and doing some of these studies, it's like 100-fold. So lots of cool stuff. You have faster rapid eye movement. Anybody who gets out just feels like they have this unbelievable clarity and elevated mood. It's very difficult to sort of explain. And, maybe you could tell them how you felt when you get out.
I always feel pretty good. So I didn't necessarily notice anything, but we were just sitting in there passively. The thing I was a little, and I know you have a protocol in place that the first time you just kind of have to go sit in there so you don't lose your mind. But I would have liked to have gotten there and hammered on the Echo bike and really seen if I could peg my heart rate, because I do a lot of aerobic work and a lot of training. So we didn't get a chance to do it because we had that first preparatory deal. But I felt fine. Kate felt fine. Cash felt fine. It was safe. I think the true magic in that thing comes when you start training and really pushing the upper registers in that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I took you up to about 16,500 feet.
Yeah.
And the chamber has the capability of going to 33,000 feet. And that's something for adaptation, and it takes the time that it takes. Some people will never make it to those elevations. And the reason why we have it above Everest, 33,000 feet, is we were working with fighter pilots and we were assimilating very similar effects that were happening in the canopy and Raptors and planes like that, of the fast ups and downs actually happening in the chamber, and what the physiological effects were on the pilots. And this is where we just started to discover the rapid oscillations. The one chamber will pull 2,000 feet a second off the floor, which is extremely fast. Going up an elevation that quickly is mind-bending. It's actually, faster some of the jets are moving, and obviously there's no inertia. It's just the air turnover of ascents and descents and the air coming in and out of the chamber.
Yeah.
But like you said, that when you're exercising, that's a whole nother, animal. A lot of my guys like to go between 10,000 and 17,000 feet riding bicycles or a treadmill, depending on what it is they're training for. You can use a Versa climber in there, rowing machine. We even put a heavy bag in there for one of the UFC fighters and a boxer. That's kind of fun, you know.
Just for just for you guys at home, I mean, we'll post some pictures and we'll do a little bit of media to kind of give you an understanding. But just for your own kind of visual, the chamber's big. I mean, we had 4 people in it. You know, I can stand up. So, I mean, you could put an exercise bike. I mean, I don't think you could put a squat rack and a barbell in there, but it'd be pretty easy. I mean, imagine maybe like a 6 or an 8 person sauna kind of positioning where, like, you know, you can get in there. So it's pretty interesting. But you have a really fascinating story. You know, one of the things that we connected on was just your origin story, the fact that you've like lived this like truly holistic lifestyle for decades, and like your personal journey and the development of everything you've done has led into Stratosphere and its core mission. You want to get into a little bit of the origin story? And I thought that was fascinating how you were a Hollywood stuntman and used to go up to the mountains and come back down, and that kind of spurred this whole thing. If time is the enemy, Grindstone is your weapon. It's the most flexible training program in the Power Athlete arsenal. Built for boardroom warriors, sleep-deprived parents, students burning the candle, and athletes with their axe to the grindstone. Grindstone delivers high-impact strength training with minimal time demands. So when life gets chaotic, your progress doesn't fall apart. Consistent, efficient, built to keep you strong, lean, and resilient, no matter what's on your plate. Claim your 7-day free trial at powerathletehq.com/grindstone and take the fight to Father Time.
The stuntman thing started back in 1988. I had an opportunity to jump off a 40-foot cliff into 3 feet of water. Somebody said, "Can you do that?" And I said, "Sure." I said, "But what's on the bottom of the water?" And it was mud. So no problem. So the impact wasn't just the water, but the mud bottom. I'd been up to my knees each time I jumped off the cliff. And you get something called the stunt bump. And they paid me $1,000 for every jump that I did. You know, you do 10 jumps, $10,000. And I was like, wow, I like this job. And then the commercials run. They are on cable and national TV, and you get paid X amount of dollars per cycle, per quarter. And I just kept doing that, but I kept ramping up the game. I became a professional climber as part of Stratosphere. I kept taking to the mountains. I was at the beach all the time, and Southern California is, you know, notorious for being fogged in 200 plus days a year.
Sure.
And I kept going to the mountains. You can get to St. Angeles Crest Forest in about 45 minutes from my doorstep, and you're up above 7,000 feet. And so I did that frequently, being the, you know, actor, model, stuntman guy. You go out on auditions. If you don't have anything for that day, you take off for the mountains early in the morning, or if you have something in the afternoon, you stay in the morning and then come back. And I continued to do this, you know, the entire time I was in Southern California from permanently from 1990 on. And unbeknownst to myself, talking to Dr. Bruce Johnson, going up and down an elevation like that is extremely healthy for you. So I'm training at altitude, and then I'm recovering at sea level, and training at altitude and recovering at sea level, whether it was rock climbing or it was riding a bicycle or it was hiking or just going up there, you know, to read and write a little bit. Just that elevation, you know, gain, and then right back down again. For a long time, I think a lot of people talked about train low, live high. That's Norma Barrier, you know. So you're getting in a tent, and there's some double-blinded placebo studies that were put out that conventional training is far superior to that, meaning it's not good. And I've had friends do that. You need to recover when you need to recover. I get the idea and the concept, but we reversed it and seem to be getting all these amazing results. The stunt work consisted of everything from high falls into airbags and being thrown out, you know, plate glass windows, you know, into the street and landing on stuff. Sometimes cardboard boxes, depending on the elevation. You know, they'd stack a bunch of boxes. Horses, car maneuvers, and hitting marks. lots of fight scene stuff because I went to the Olympic trials in '92 for wrestling. I've been wrestling since I was a kid, and the last place I was Iowa. Dan Gable was my coach. When I trained for the trials, the Hawkeye Club. What an experience that was. I didn't realize you could train 3.5 hours in the morning and 3.5 hours at night. I would always say, Coach, don't you think we're overtraining? And he'd point to the sign in the back, and the sign in the back said, "Let those who are tired defect," because he was always trying to outdo the Russians. But he's got knee replacements and hip replacements, and I think that whenever I got sick or didn't feel well, and you'd be out for a couple of days, you come back and you feel so much better, and you seem to be functioning better than everybody on the team because you're not tired. The no pain, no gain thing, I think, was his back door. But part of that drive of wrestling and training that many hours drove me into looking into, what are the greatest things that you could do for yourself for health. And obviously, you're into this, and anybody who's sort of athletic and looking at longevity. That's going on in such a big way on the planet. There's so many people, the billionaires. Look at Zuckerberg and Bezos. They want to get healthy, right? They want to get in shape. Yeah, Zuckerberg's doing jujitsu, and before that, he was like not this guy that did anything like that. He was more sitting down and working on the computer and coming up with Facebook and all the things that he's done. But there's a lot of things happening on the planet simultaneously with technology and becoming younger, actually pulling years off of your life and gaining more youth. And people are looking into this thing feverishly. And I feel like the main frame is your lungs. They do the most work, right? 75% of the detox. They're the last things to grow when you're in the womb, and they're the first things to age. They're very complex. If you were to remove your lungs and spread them out, they take up the size of a tennis court, which is really mind-bending. We've done some stuff. Bruce has done some studies, Dr. Bruce Johnson over at Mayo, where they put some CO2 in your lungs. They fill them up, and you can't breathe, and you feel like you're suffocating. And you do the same thing once they clear out, and your lungs will actually create pockets to protect them, and sort of an automatic response. So again, last things to grow in the womb, first things to age. At 31, you drop about 1%. And then every year thereafter, on average, up 1% a year. So by the time you're in your mid 60s, you're missing about 30% lung capacity.
Wow.
Which means that the oxygen that you need to take in, your vital organs are missing 30% of that. And that's the beginning of the end. Everything starts to sort of shrink. You start to hunch over. The lungs get smaller. Everything's not getting thin, including the mainframe. So what we're discovering with Stratosphere is it's regenerating lung tissue. We do something called lung packing. We work on a whole bunch of different breath work when we're in there, expanding and contracting the lungs. And there's something called an RAS cell, a respiratory cell, that's been discovered back in 2019. They call it a new body part. You can look this up, Google it. And I've had a bunch of long haul COVID people come in. I would say, a couple of dozen to date. And the lung problems, the people with lung problems seem to dissipate in a very short spurt. Some take up to 3 weeks. Some long and intensive weekend, and they get huge benefits. I had a buddy of mine, a wrestling buddy of mine from junior college. His wife came in, oxygen tank, some steroids and some medication, and she did an intensive 4-day weekend, and she left without using the oxygen tank, and she went off her stuff. And to date, she's still in the upper 90s. Her SpO2 when she came in was, upper 80s and would drop down below that. She struggled to stand and wash dishes for too long. So it's pretty interesting, this RAS cell, so we're looking more into that.
This episode of Power Athlete Radio is powered by Train Heroic, the most immersive strength training app experience on the market. We've built an online training business by partnering with Train Heroic to deliver all of our world-class training programs like Jack Street, Hammer, Field Strong, and Grindstone. To learn which Power Athlete training program best suits your goals, head to powerathletehq.com/training. And if you're a coach looking to build a business with the best training tech in the business, head to trainheroic.com/powerathletehq. And now back to the show. Wow. For those who are like, can you get into a little bit of the design and how you kind of came about with the chamber and like how this thing differs from like a typical hyperbaric or an altitude chamber?
Sure. So, like I said, we were talking about Norma barrier. Norma barrier is fake altitude. I'm not sure how they come up with, it's like putting a mask on. It's very similar. When I went to the United States Performance Center, they had a Norma barric room that they rode bicycles on, and I said, well, you got two air conditioning units in the back. You're thinning out the air, but there's no pressure changes, so you're missing quite a bit of the physiological effects. And I said, a cheaper way, $250,000. I said, a cheaper way to go might be putting a pillow over your face. It's kind of the same thing. And they just laughed. But they came out to California. They got in the chamber, hypobaric, which is what we're doing, altitude. We take off from whatever elevation the chamber is sitting. We go to the elevations that we can go to up to 33,000 feet and back down to where we took off from. Hyperbaric is you're going below and you're forcing oxygen in. We're just using ambient air and we're doing pressure changes and oscillations. So the other thing with the going down, it takes a very long time with the hyperbarics. I think the sessions are like, an hour or 90 minutes. We do 22-minute sessions in the chamber because it's extremely fast. Same thing in the Loxy hypoxico rooms. You're in there for quite some time. But with these physiological effects of fast oscillations and pressure changes, you don't need to be in this chamber training for very long. So Norma barrier, hyperbarrier, hypobarrier, and we're the latter. The other two are completely different. And again, as we keep going forward, we're discovering more and more and more about the hypobarrier. And what we're doing in there, John, is creating homeostasis. You're having to create this adaptation of training at these elevations. Now, everybody knows, especially the fighters around Southern California, they go up to Big Bear and they train, to gain red blood cells. So the same thing is happening with the chamber, only you're getting to recover right away when you get out of the chamber, right? You're being forced into this adaptation homeostasis up at these higher elevations doing this training, but immediately you're out and you're already recovering. Your body hits a bunch of these molecular switches, turning on these things for testosterone, EPO, and the like. But the whole thing is about recovery. Now, the other thing about the chamber is you can recover in the chamber as well. Going to a low to moderate elevation and doing fast pressure changes, call it just a blip, like 2,500 feet, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Some of the things that I sent you earlier that you're going to be able to look at is the actual elevation changes and what that actually looks like. I can actually, if you want me to, this is one of the pictures you have. It's kind of cool. I think you guys can see that pretty well. And you can see up to 25,000 feet, but you can see these elevation and pressure changes right there.
Sure.
Very, very interesting stuff. So that's a typical session right there at 22 minutes. And going to, that person went to about 17,000 feet. And I think it's like unlimited human potential. It's not more is more, but dedicated 3 times a week, people seem to be on top of their game. One of my guys, whom I really, really, really like, I don't know if I told you about him when he was there, Ezra Freck.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that name?
No.
He's an Olympian, Paralympian. Born missing part of his leg, part of the arm,
Uh-huh.
and long jumper, high jumper. And he started noticing after several weeks of using the chamber, he said he started to feel like an increase in energy. And so he started running on the track, and he's a fast guy, but he was never going to run the 100. That's not what he was doing. He was mainly high jump and threw in long jump and was working on that. But he ended up being the fastest guy on his team at USC. He started turning really big times in, and he started feeling better and better and better. Well, lo and behold, in Paris, he was ranked like 7th, and he won the gold medal. He's also getting I think an Adidas deal right now. I talked to him yesterday. He wants to come in. He's got Worlds coming up, and he wants to triple threat. Pete. He wants to win the long jump, the high jump, and the 100.
Oh, damn.
Because it's never been done, and he's working on that. But he's such an ace, dude. He walks in the room and he's got such a presence, and he's such a good guy, and he doesn't see himself as like somebody who's missing stuff. He sees himself as somebody who can get more done. It's super inspiring, super inspiring. So we've had a couple of things like that. Another good one is Brian Ortega. This is really fun. Brian Ortega fought Rodriguez down in Mexico City, 7,500 feet elevation. And, the press gave him a hard time saying he was partying in LA and he never went down to Mexico City, 7,500 feet to train, and that he's going to get run over by this guy and he's going to tire really fast and on and on and on. And he jokingly said, yeah, no, I trained at Everest. They're like, what are you talking about? He said, you'll find out. So he got dropped twice in the first round. This is an interesting part of the chamber as well. He got dropped twice in the first round. The second time I figured it's got to be over. I mean, he got hit hard. You could see the fight on YouTube. And somehow or another, he managed to make his way back with 30 seconds left or so in the first round. Second round, he went out and he just tore this guy up. He really took it to him. Third round, his coach said, well, look, he's done. Look at him. And he put him away and it was over. He said that when he got dropped, he knew where he was. He said his body functions gave out, like his legs gave out, he fell and all that, but he was able to protect himself. So this is an interesting thing that I'm going to talk about. Spinal fluid moves really quickly with these pressure changes going up and down, and there's an enormous amount of blood flow going up and down inside the brain. And we think some of the spinal fluid stays up there for a long period of time, creating some sort of protective brain barrier for impacts, right? So instead of it rocking around fast, maybe it moves a little slower because the spinal fluid's up there protecting it a little bit. We wondered if that, again, these are anecdotal things, a lot of the things that I'm saying. The Mayo studies on stem cells and red blood cells and EPO, these are all real, scientific research studies. But some of these things that we're discovering with like the fighters and the Olympian kid that ran that race, he called yesterday and he said, look, I ran 100 today. I haven't been in the chamber in a long time. And he said, I didn't feel like myself. I didn't feel like I had the stamina. He's like, I want to come 3 times a week before I go to Worlds because I want to win another gold at Worlds. So there's a lot to this, and there's a lot of things that we're going to discover. I myself have some bragging rights and pat myself on the back for being in the shape that I am at 62 years old. I'm still functioning at a very, very high level. I think you'll get a kick out of this. Carter Starachi was at my house about 5 days ago. Meryl and I are obviously up in Idaho. Carter Starachi, 5-time NCAA champ in wrestling. He walks around at about 195 pounds, which is the same weight as me, but he's also 23 or 23 years old or 24 years old. I have a mat at my house. We got on the mat, John.
Nice.
It wasn't pretty. He beat the snot out of me. I was so gassed, but I mean, most of it is, if you don't know how to wrestle, even if you know how to wrestle, if you go up against somebody who's the best in the world, you get really tense. You know what I mean? You're not relaxed, and every body part is like locked and tense. So when I first got on the mat with him, I have a super high bone density. When we went out of bounds, I was hanging with him. Obviously, in the first minute, I'm not going to get tired. He's like, dude, what's with the bone density? Because we were roughing each other up. But my point is, at 62, to be rolling on the mat with him and his buddy for about an hour and a half, I was gassed, but I kept coming back and getting better and getting better. And by the end, he was like, I can't believe like how much different you are from the beginning. He's like, when's the last time you competed, wrestling? I said, somebody of your caliber? I said, 33 years ago. And so, but for me to be able to step on the mat at 62 years old with this kid, I'm not saying I beat him. I did catch him a couple of times with a few different things. I loved it. I've been back and forth with him texting the last couple of days. I'm hoping that he stays and I can go back to the house and see if I can redeem myself and do a little bit better. But just saying that, I mean, who at 62? You know, my buddies are like, let's go play golf. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to wrestle with Carter Starachi for an hour.
Yeah.
How much fun is that?
No, it's very good, and it's very indicative of not only your lifestyle, but what you've been doing up until this point. It's not as if, you know, at 6 years old, you decided to make fitness a priority. I mean, it's been your life, your entire existence. So I think in terms of health and fitness and wellness, the earlier you can start the fight, the better outcomes you have going on. And I think for a lot of people,
Absolutely.
they don't really put the time and the effort in because they're young and there's always going to be time for it. And then they get to a point where, you know, something happens. Either they have, you know, negative blood work, they get a heart attack, I mean, maybe cancer. I mean, all these different things get exasperated, and now all of a sudden they kind of return to it. I mean, but I think there's a luck in the draw. You know, I got a phone call earlier this week from a good friend of mine who's in his early 50s and probably the most physically dialed human being I've ever been around. Has not missed a workout since he was 12 years old, and every single day consists of at least a 1 mile walk as like a minimum, but weighed and measured everything. I mean, ate a perfect diet, supplements. I mean, just, you know, didn't drink, didn't smoke, most dialed human being I've ever met in my entire life, and stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And, you know, that kind of blasted me from the side, because here's a guy that's, you know, did everything right. And, you know,
did he have that a genetic predisposition? Did anybody in the family?
No, you know, he didn't say, but it's just, I think there are, like, I'm not bringing this up to him in any other way other than to say, like, you don't know when the end is coming. So you better take care of yourself as well as you can to that point. And he's been fighting through it and battling it. And, like, you know, he'll end up beating this thing because he was so fit getting it into. And I think what people don't realize, and like what you're talking about, is, you know, you keep a high level of fitness because you don't know if a high class wrestler is going to knock on your door and want to go for an hour. You know, the same thing I run into in terms of jiu-jitsu. Like, we had an opportunity to go train with the guys at the B team, getting ready for CGI with Victor Hugo, and be able to get on the mat and roll with those guys for, you know, not an hour, but I mean, you know, 10-minute rounds, and, you know, not get absolutely murdered is indicative of just good training, good health, and good wellness and longevity. And then, you know, they say the same things, like, damn, how old are you? And then you tell them and they're like, shit, I don't even know anybody your age. And you're like, well, why? And they're like, well, they're not here or they're dead. So I think, you know, your lifestyle, Southern California, you know, I mean, obviously genetics plays into it. You know, genetics, geography, and opportunity are some of the best determining factors for success and wellness. But I think it's a fascinating technology. When we were there, you did talk about light, sound, vibration, magnets, pressure, as kind of this, like, you know, almost like a spectrum of different things that hit different senses. How did you come up with, like, that combination, and how do each of those roll? Like, how do those play in the experience?
Well, looking into each one of those, I was trying to pull something up here. It only took me a second. I was really close, because it has to do with what you just said. 1930. So my legs and hands and shoulders, like, if I drop my drawers, dude, my legs are identical. You can't tell the difference between them. So genetics 100% is a part of all of this, right? But at the same time, we can control our environment, which can override some of the pre-genetic dispositions of things. Like, I mean, picture yourself not have been an athlete that you are, or a guy that trained like you did, or does jiu-jitsu, or played football, or lifted the weights you had. Like, imagine what you would be like if you were sedentary. Like, I don't know what that'd be. Would you have a belly? Would you be a fat guy with skinny shoulders? And, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think about that because I look at you, and we have similar traits about how hard we trained and the things what we wanted and what we went after. You know, I played football from 5 years old until junior college, and like, you know, you're a different animal than a regular guy who sits behind a desk kind of thing.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I could never I could never look at you and go, imagine what John would be like if he was, like, you know, he worked in an office and he never did any sports. We wouldn't have anything in common, you know, when it came to physicality, you know, if I was on the other side.
Yeah.
And I do have friends that you know, are not super athletic, but predominantly, I think the same with you. Who are you hanging with? Like all these like athletic guys, right? Just like the buddy you just talked about.
Yeah.
But back to your prior question, lighting, sound, vibration, magnets. There is merit in every one of these things scientifically, right? And my brain, I think I may have said this to you. I saw the movie Passengers, right? You know that movie? Chris Pratt, Jennifer Lawrence. They
Yes.
travel. Yeah. And they're going to wake up 300 years from now and start a new civilization because Earth's coming to an end and everybody's sleeping in a pod. And Pratt ends up waking up Jennifer Lawrence and they end up getting together. But when that went on, they figured out the ship was broken and he died. She brought him back by putting him in a chamber, right? So hence the idea of chamber. Maybe lighting, sound, vibration, magnets, air turnover, temperature changes, exercise, and the pressure changes, oscillations will reverse a lot of things that we have. I look at cancer, heart disease, diabetes, arthritis, Alzheimer's. They're the 5 sisters that are attacking you, and they predominantly go after the elderly,
Sure.
right? Those things are things that, if you can stave off the aging, would those things attack you? Would we end up with a whole new set of things that take you out? I don't know, but the pioneering towards that is just, it drives me, man. I mean, imagine you walk in the chamber, old with a cane, and you walk out the other side, you got, new teeth and you're vibrant and young again. I think everybody has been looking for the Ponce de Leon, fountain of youth thing. But here we are with all this technology, and we're waking up and going, wait a minute, it's possible. Is it really possible to live 200 years? Now, I said that to Bruce a decade ago when we were working together. He said, how long do you think you're going to live? I'm like, 200 years. He's like, you can't say that. I said, I just said it. And he started laughing. So now he says, you're probably going to make it to 150. A lot of people are, unless you get run over by a bus or fall off a rock.
So we were, I went to a conference on longevity here last year in Austin, put on by Adil Khan, who's, out of Canada, but now I think he's the Saudi royal family doctor. He had some guys there that were geneticists that got up and said, based on all of our research and everything that we know about, genetics, we look at the genes and we have about 120 years in us. And we can pretty like that's how long we can get. The problem is you get to 120, you look like you're 120 and nobody wants to be 120. So their whole deal was about freezing age and being like, if I could just freeze you or freeze your age at like 40 or 50 and then you could make it to 120, would you want to live to 120? And everybody was like, of course, if I could be physically the way that I am for another, 70 plus years, I mean, would that be something that you would take? 100%. The biggest issue they ran into, though, is during that time being able to beat off all-cause mortality, things like heart attacks and cancer, and really what kills most people. Very few people die of old age, where all of a sudden they're just old and they go to sleep one day and they just don't wake up, which, in a perfect world sounds like the best way to go. Just, like think about like the old Navajo Indian or like the old, movie where the old guy just goes to sleep under a blanket at a fire and doesn't wake up the next day. But they said about 120, the problem is we got to beat all cause mortality. So they kind of went through a thing like the majority of men in this country will either die of a heart attack or cancer. So they recommended, regular sauna treatments. If you look at the Finn studies, if you get somewhere around 70 total minutes a week in 3 to 4 sessions, over 174, like all-cause mortality for heart attack just kind of goes to zero. So then they talked about cancer, being able to, understand, what are the mechanisms of cancer. Now, whether or not you believe in the, genetics of cancer or exposure, I mean, we're living at a much more, I guess you could say, chemically induced, or just we're exposed to a lot more chemicals than we were even, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 50 or 100 years ago. And then if you take a step further back, I mean, almost, 1940, Dr. Warburg comes out with the Warburg effect, where his theory of cancer was that there's mitochondrial dysfunction. And when the mitochondria become, weak and they can't basically produce an ATP and energy to survive, they end up fermenting glutamine and sugar as like an alternate, without oxygen, they become anaerobic. So when they can no longer produce energy, just the cells to survive start surviving off fermenting sugar and glutamine, and that Warburg effect, and that's what becomes cancer. So his whole theory was based on mitochondrial dysfunction. And what strengthens the mitochondria? Sunshine, exercise, large aerobic base, eating well, sleeping. I mean, all the things that like we know we should do, but unfortunately we live in this digital world where, constant dopamine hits and we're sucked into these different devices and everything. So I really subscribe to not that there aren't some problems within like the Warburg effect, but I really subscribe to the idea of mitochondrial density, and more importantly, like making sure your mitochondria are healthy for a long period of time if you're going to survive and beat cancer.
That's, Meryl and I have the 7 doctors. You just mentioned a couple of them. Dr. Sun, Dr. Air, Dr. Water, Dr. Earth, Dr. Nutrition, Dr. Exercise, and Dr. Rest.
Yeah.
Available 24/7. You just need to learn how to use them.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that Kennedy's bringing back his uncle's presidential physical fitness for the kids. I mean, there's the start right there. The kids want to get one of those patches. And if you have them doing that, then it carries over. Yeah. I was so big into that when I was a kid. I loved it.
I never was able to do the pull-ups. But I ended up being able to pass it with the flexed arm hang. So you remember they had, I think it was like 5 or 10 pull-ups you had to do. I couldn't get the pull-up number, but if you jumped up and you held for like 30 seconds, you could do that flexed arm hang. And so the funny part, or the funny story, was every day I'd go out to PE, I'd like jump up there and get into position to practice for the flexed arm hang, and then do like kind of an accentuated negative all the way down. And the funny part was I had no pull-ups when I started, but I ended up getting to the point where I could do the flexed arm hang. And then by the time we did it, I can't remember, it was in 8th grade, 7th grade, I jumped up and actually did a pretty clean pull-up into position and held. And I was so shocked because you kind of had to like jump up and almost like kick yourself into position off of like the, off the standards on the sides. But this one I jumped up and actually pulled up into position, and I was like, did the flexed arm hang, and I was like, shit, man, I might have been able to get the pull-ups, but I ended up passing, and that was a big deal. And then you also had to do like a push-ups. I think it was a certain amount of push-ups in time. And then there was a sit-up.
There was a shuttle run. There was the 600-yard dash, right?
Yeah, which was terrible.
I think it was a softball throw as well. How far you could throw the softball. Yeah, there was some cool stuff. You'll love this. You'll appreciate this. I had a gym teacher. He's still around. When we were in elementary school, 2nd grade, Tony Quintoni was his name.
Okay,
that's a real New York name.
I pulled it up.
He just got.
I pulled it up. It's a 1 mile run, pull-ups or push-ups, but we actually did both. It's a sit-up test, a shuttle run, and then they had a sit and reach test for flexibility. So
you had a mile run. We had a 600.
Yeah. Ours was
in the 70s, and up until 81 in the 70s, it was a 600-yard dash, the shuttle run, the pull-ups, the softball throw. This is off the top of my head, and I think there was maybe some sort of short run as well.
Yeah, that's a shuttle run. For agility and speed, they had a shuttle run
to grab the blocks, right?
Yeah, you had to run and touch. But I remember we had it was pull-ups or the flexed arm hang, and then you had to do a certain amount of push-ups in like 30 seconds, and or maybe it was 60 seconds or 30, but. That's kind of what I remember. But
we had the hang was what the girls did because they couldn't do the pull-ups.
Yeah, you and me both, or them and me both.
But you outdid that. You started doing the pull-ups.
Well, yeah.
That's interesting that you train for it, watching TV. That's how it comes on. That's really good.
Well, no, I one of the determining factors for me has always been kind of like if I'm not able to hold the standard, a little bit of shame has been a driving like kind of central theme in my life. And going out there, and I remember the first time when we did it in 6th grade, I wasn't able to do it. And I was so pissed that because I did the push-ups, I did everything else, I did the run. And I was like, shit, man, I need to be able to do this. So every day I went out there and just jumped up on the pull-up bar and practiced. Figured if I just do it every day, I'll probably be able to figure it out. There might be some trick to it. And then when we did it that next year, I passed. And then when I kept going out and practicing it, and that next year I jumped up and did a pull-up into position and ended up just doing the flexed arm hang. And then I thought about it when I came down. I'm like, shit, I wonder if I could have done the pull-ups. So I ended up trying. I mean, I didn't pass it, but it was it was a good experience, and I think it's something that's important. The thing which I'm a little worried about is in the 70s and the 80s, a lot of kids didn't pass and didn't get the patch, and all the kids were pretty fit back then. Like people rode bikes to school, people walked. We all rode our bikes to baseball. I mean, like the fact that like we drive our kids to sports. I mean, we came home, get off the bus, got on our bikes, grabbed our stuff, and like we would ride our bikes to all of our practices. So it's just kind of a different existence where, now with cell phones and this, so I'm a little apprehensive and a little nervous that a very small amount of these kids are going to pass. I mean, compared to what they did last time, it was something that was active.
Yeah, it was definitely a different time. Drinking out of the hose at your friend's house. That's how you got water. You didn't ask anybody for a glass of water. You just grab the hose and drink out of that.
Well, yeah, I remember the first time I saw bottled water. This was kind of an interesting thing. We were playing tennis at like these tennis courts.
What year are you thinking?
Oh man, I wasn't able to drive, so I was still riding a bicycle. So maybe 11, 12 years old. So this probably would have been like late 80s, early 90s. And we were at a like public tennis courts and we were playing tennis. Just because
was it Evian? Evian was like one of the first waters.
Yeah, that's what it was. And these women were at the next court and they had bottles of Evian. And like, I was like, what is that? Because the only thing I'd ever seen was like, they had like Perrier bottles. I do remember going to like fancy restaurants and like the little Perrier things, and they had these big water bottles and they were drinking. And I think somebody was like, ooh, it's special French water. And we were like, oh, bottled water. Like, that's crazy. Like we have a Sparklets thing.
And you probably thought the same thing I thought. Who would pay for water?
Yeah.
Why would you pay for water?
Well, we would have Sparklets would deliver these big 5-gallon drums. And we had this kind of like Sparklets thing in the kitchen. And when it get low, you'd have to like pop it off and pour it in. And so that was always a lot of fun because trying to get that thing in without making a total mess. And that's kind of, if you were drinking out of the faucet, there was that. I mean, or like you said, out of the hose. But I just think it was a different world. And then the reason I was telling this story is when we were kids, we were constantly looking for new things to do because we would play street hockey and throw rocks at cars. I mean, there was just a million different things. Like we were like, what trouble are we going to get in today? And I remember
why did we throw rocks at cars? I did the same thing. To get chased, right? We did it for the chase.
Yeah, no. So we would even, you're going to love this. We would take like long strips of duct tape and we would put them all over the road. And then when the car would drive over it, it would slap the back of the car and make it sound like a flat tire. And then the person would pull over. And of course we would be like, a couple 100 yards down from where we set them up. And then we would ambush them with whatever, if we were going to throw something at them. And then they would invariably slam the door, get out, and then chase us. And then we would run and jump over roofs and like play this like stupid game. And I have zero idea why we did it. To this day, I still talk to my brother and I'm like, why did we do that? And he's like, I have no idea. It seems crazy.
Because it was the thrill of getting chased, I think.
Well, and these guys are probably going to beat the shit out of us if they ever caught us.
Of course, if they catch you. Yeah. We've thrown rocks at cop cars. They're really little rocks, but they pull over and the lights go on and they come out and we're running through the woods and jumping over fences, different neighbors' yards, knowing where to go to get to the fort that we have hidden, like a little underground fort or something. It was, little boy stuff for sure. We did that. I remember one of our buddies got caught and he gave up no names. And he was kind of like the weakling of the group that everybody made fun of and picked on. He got a lot of merit. He got a lot of merit for not giving up anybody. He gave up nobody. Like nobody got scolded or got in trouble. Nobody got a phone call. Nobody showed up at nobody's house, and it was a cop that caught him. And he just would not give up anything. So he became a different guy amongst the group, right? Instead of just being like the weakling. Yeah, that was fun stuff as kids. We did some crazy things as kids, man. That was one of them. Snowballs were always being thrown at cars to get them to stop. That was a nonstop thing in the winter.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Southern California, so not a lot of snowballs.
New York for me, the
Yeah.
east end of Long Island.
You're obviously super passionate about natural health and non-invasive technologies and really just kind of maximizing. Is there a place where Stratosphere replaces the need for like performance enhancers or pharmaceuticals? I mean, like, with the,
I sure hope so. I've never I didn't partake in any of that. I've never, PEDs. My grandfather said to me, the picture of my granddad, you saw him. So he'd been around a lot of stuff, wrestling, boxing, and playing football. I'll find a picture of him with Joe Louis in there. Joe Louis, Billy Conn, and my grandfather back in the special forces in World War II. I got this amazing image of him. He had friends that have taken drugs and they got sick from it, the ones that abuse it or whatever. He said to me, are people offering you steroids? This is when I was in high school. And I said, yeah, it's talked about, this one kid, his dad was giving it to him. We had a couple of guys that we knew the dads were actually giving the kids performance enhancement drug, testosterone, right? Well, Dynabol, whatever, back then. And my grandfather told me, he goes, if you ever take steroids of any kind or any performance enhancing drugs, I will cut both your hands off and you won't play sports. And then, and I was like, good point. He also, I said to him, how do I beat these guys? I remember when I got to junior college, there were a couple of guys on them on opposite teams, and they were notorious for it. And it wasn't really drug testing in the early 80s for that. And in junior college, and I said, how do I beat a guy that's on steroids? And he said, you already won when you stepped on the mat. I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, they're cheating you, they're cheating themselves, and they're cheating the sport. Just keep going after them, you'll wear them down. He's like, those muscles aren't real. Their hearts aren't getting bigger, their organs aren't getting bigger to support that stuff. He goes, they'll be powerful in the beginning and they'll fall apart. And I always thought like that. Like, again, you're talking to a guy who was around since the early 1900s and played sports and was around these people. Why wouldn't I listen to him? He was such a mentor and such an amazing human being, and everything he said made sense. One of the things he said to me, and this is not me being a chauvinist in any way, shape, or form, women are far more powerful than we are, and I know you agree with me. They're the givers of life. They're profound. They go deeper. They have emotions that we can't tap into. The list is endless, but the givers of life being number one. I mean, that's the number one thing. It's just insane. So I was once watching a game, Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Rams, and a girl came in the locker room and interviewed everybody after the game. And my grandfather said, "What's a woman doing in a man's locker room after a football game when they're naked and half dressed?" And I was like, "I don't know. She's usually on the sidelines." I was like 8 years old. And he said, have you ever seen a man in a woman's locker room after a sporting event and they're naked and half dressed? And I was like, no. And he goes, do you want to know why? This is my grandfather. I said, why? He said, because we respect them. Why can't they respect us? And he giggled and he said, I'd like to be in a woman's locker room, but I wouldn't do that because I respect them too much. Oh. And so there is a line that my grandfather taught me too, on male female, and he said, always know that they're superior to us and you're here to protect them. He goes, and it's been like that for thousands of years. And he said, everybody, women and men, have all these amazing traits, and we should love each other and respect each other for those things. But I don't know how I went to that. I guess because of the way my grandfather thought, based on the steroids and stuff. There's a time and place for everything. There are people who need testosterone, right?
Sure.
There are people who need a steroid, or they need an HGH thing because their body doesn't produce it. But to use it as a means to beat your opponent at something, if it's a drug league and everybody's on them, by all means, everybody have them. But to do them and not and act like you're not doing them, I don't know. It's just cheating. And then I look around. There's a couple people out there that I'm not going to sit there and say give names, but they're on HGH and stuff, and they look like they're on their way out. They got everything going for them, and they're on these things, and they do not look good. Bigger heads and bags under their eyes and you know, all these things. Like, I don't know. I just, it's not my thing, man. And I do believe exactly what you said. Things like Stratosphere. I mean, you know this. You get sunlight, your hormones go up like 120% if you get sun on your back
Sure.
and on the front. I think it's 200% if you get naked sun. And it's 20 minutes. And you know what? Go meditate for 20 minutes in the sun. Like every day, you're going to be getting your testosterone and all that stuff. I know you know about sunlight. I know you know a lot about these things. I personally, I think you're the same way. I'd rather work for it. I'd rather do all these things, and I made it fun. I love it. Before we got on the phone today, Meryl and I did a 1,000-foot hike, elevation gain.
Nice.
You know, directly into the sun, going up the mountains, and then came back. I mean, I love it. I love that stuff.
Where you guys?
Right now, I'm talking to you. You're not doing this because you're still sitting. I got up like 15 minutes ago. I'm on my feet.
Yeah.
I'm just moving back and forth a little bit because you know what happens when you sit too long. I mean, it hurts your hips and all kinds of things go on. But
yeah, well, that's why you kind of
digestion shuts down.
That's why you kind of see me kind of squirming around a little bit, and I actually purposely sit in the world's most uncomfortable chair. And the reason being is that if when we first started doing these podcasts, we used to sit in like pretty comfortable chairs, and you kind of just end up kind of sitting back and like just, I don't know, getting too comfortable and just kind of just sit and blah, blah, blah. So I ended up throwing them away and getting these like metal chairs that are a little too small, not very comfortable, and that it kind of makes me have to sit up straight all the time and like kind of sit in positions. So you'll see me kind of fidget a little bit, but it's just mainly because I'm sitting in an uncomfortable chair, and it's just by design.
I do a balance ball when I'm on the computer. I do a balance ball, and I get down low, so my hands have to come up high on the keys. So I'm doing this, because of this, this all day. It's like this ruins you. You see so many people their necks are over.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's unbelievable. I feel like everything is forcing you to lean over. In your car, the seat kind of pushes you forward a little bit. On a plane, and sitting I remember maybe 5-10 years ago, somebody said to me, sitting's the new smoking, because that's how much damage it does if you continue to do it. And doing the Stratosphere and struggling through getting that company off the ground and what I'm going through, the amount of sitting you do because you're talking on the phone and sending out emails and text messages, my hips started to hurt, my shoulders started to hurt, and it had nothing to do with injuries. It was sedentary sitting that, like, your glutes shut down and your hip flexors start to shorten. You're not utilizing anything. And you get out there and exercise more, or do what I'm doing now. Just get up for a few minutes in between, and everything's going to be okay.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Where you at in Idaho?
Yeah.
Oh, where are you at in Idaho?
Yes, we're in Idaho.
Oh, I just didn't know. Are you in Coeur d'Alene?
We're in Haley. We're just south of Sun Valley. You know Sun Valley, Ketchum?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're just south of that, the sister town that's a little bit south. We're in Haley. Meryl and I have a small ranch.
Oh, badass.
Little 10-acre ranch.
Nice, dude. That's awesome.
It's magnificent.
Makes you not want to go back to Southern California, huh?
We said that earlier. We have to come up more because we own this house, and so we have to come up and take care of it. It's a small little place, like 2,500 square feet. And it's got a little barn, and it's quite magnificent. I can show you pictures of that too.
Yeah, sounds perfect. I have always longed for a smaller, more efficient house. I think everybody wants a bigger house. I like my favorite homes that I've lived in have always just been small and efficient, that have enough closet space that you can just there's no clutter, and you can just keep everything nice and clean and simple. There you go.
You see that?
Yeah. There you go.
Out in the middle of nowhere, and then you got to have that shot too.
There you go. Nice.
The wintry shot.
Yeah.
We stayed here during COVID for 2 years, and dude, I haven't done a winter since the 80s, and I was out shoveling snow every day. I think the one winter that we were here the entire time, I left the second winter, 400 inches plus of snow. Like every day you got up, it was it's more snow. I don't know how. I was just like, and then you start, just like you said, let's go back to Southern California. There's no snow there. It's really nice. You get up every day. You don't realize how spoiled you are with the change of seasons. You
Yeah.
really don't.
No.
You get a lot done. You really appreciate it.
Yeah. No, I mean, just going home to Southern California, you realize after living in Texas, how nice the weather is. You get out. I mean, there's no bugs. I mean, it's just it's truly a magical place. It's fairy tale land. But every time my brother went to school in Idaho for a couple of years, and we used to travel up there to go see him. And I'm fairly familiar, having driven around a lot, and I have some friends that are, in Coeur d'Alene and some of these different areas. But I think Idaho and probably that area, Montana and Wyoming, that whole little area is some of the best country in the United States if you're robust enough to be able to deal with the winters. And that's why a lot of people from either Texas or Southern California have two homes and go up there in the summer and then leave in the winter. And whereas I'd almost look at it the other way and say, you know what, like if that's the best it has to offer, I mean, with the skiing and everything, I mean, you can't beat it. So to get back onto Stratosphere, because I feel like we've just gone down a bunch of rabbit holes, where do you see the technology going the next 5 years? Do you feel that the technology is established, you've done what you've wanted to with it, or do you feel that it's ever evolving, that every chamber and every kind of new iteration and version that comes out is the best version coming?
Ever evolving for sure. Consortium of data coming, getting some stuff from the UFC people, doing studies and finding out what they're finding parallel works best. There's an amazing facility out in Scottsdale, Arizona called Vincere. Vincere works with, you'll appreciate this, first responders, firemen, policemen, military personnel. About 80 of them come through a week with the ailments, the heart disease, the lung disease, the cancers, the things that you and I were just recently speaking about. That happens a lot with those guys, high cortisol levels in police environments. Same with the military. The firemen will, guard their hearts and lungs going into these fires, and just absolutely insane. We want to place the chamber with Vincere. They're talking about purchasing for, we're going to give it to them as little as possible, because we want it in there for all of these people, and they want to do studies, ongoing studies. And have 80 of these personnel. 80 of these people come through their building a month, or I'm sorry, a week. 80 of those guys are coming through their building a week. So we want to have them use it and utilize it for some of the things, like you said, and instead of taking a drug or being on something or getting an operation, how do we enhance the body? Self-healing, self-sufficient, self-sustaining, provided the right environment, inside and out. That's the way I think. It's more about the homework than it is about, going to the doc. I think our emergency medical care is absolutely profound in the United States. The preventative is zero.
Yeah.
Right.
If you get a heart attack,
yeah,
or you get shot, or something like acute happens,
amazing,
like a car accident, we're the best in the world in terms of trauma. I just think we failed in terms of managing chronic disease.
Well, we're working so hard. The Industrial Revolution was vocations, right? I don't know if being that I'm a little older, the guidance counselor was on me in junior high school. What do you want to go to college for? I'm like, I'm only 12. I don't know what I want to do yet. Yeah, you need to figure it out. So I think there was a whole drive with Rockefeller and Carnegie for everybody to work, and I love work. I come from a working class family. My dad, my uncle, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, all New York firemen, and working when they're not being a fireman, right? Like mechanics and farmers and fishermen, and, growing up that way. But I think Stratosphere is going to be able to enhance human performance, longevity, recovery, and I think it's going to help with people becoming more efficient to manage disease or not get disease as a form of preventative. Like I was talking about with the lungs, strengthening the heart. Dr. Bruce Johnson did some studies with hypobarier. He was part of this where they induced heart attacks in mice. And when they recovered, they'd have scar tissue on their hearts, from the heart attack. Yeah, after several months of using the hypobarier and doing the oscillations, there was no scar tissue to be found. And so it's like little things like that are pieces of hope that better things and more amazing things will come. And then back to the lighting, sound, vibration, magnets, you add those in. What's the synergistic blend of that? What actually is the outcome going to be? That's the stuff that really moves me. I'm like, we could just take this whole thing to a whole nother level. And I think our brains are part of it too. But yes, I think that Stratosphere has the capability, with the lighting, sound, vibration, magnets, the expansion of these things all together, to create unlimited human potential, just to take it to a whole nother level. I feel like at least in my world, your world, we're turning towards that. I mean, I know you love health. You love it. You thrive off of it. I'm kind of the same way. Like, how do we get better? Yeah, I don't think I'm ever satisfied. If I went out and ran a mile right now and I did it in 4 minutes, you said, great job. I'm like, I could run faster. I was having a bad day.
That idea of human performance is an interesting one. And as you've been talking, we have really pushed the model for human performance in a lot of different ways in terms of like the standard modalities, right? Like, lifting weights, being able to train athletic like we do here on Power Athlete, the idea of fostering developing athleticism being one of the, core fundamentals and really the principles that build on Power Athlete, and that involves, using your body to the best of your ability, which might look like a leaner version, a stronger version, more muscle, like whatever you need to, kind of dial up or dial down, basically to allow you to be the best version of yourself. I think it's extremely vapid to go in and just, train for aesthetics and hypertrophy. Not that I'm against it, because I'm a vain person too, but I want to be fit and strong and muscular and stable and all those, so that I can accomplish my tasks, which, for a long time was playing football. And after that, whatever it looked like, whether it was training, but, jujitsu, whatever, like looking physically strong and fit and not being able to go and use it in meaningful and interesting ways. Like for a long time when we moved here, being fit enough to go out and be able to cut wood and drag trees and do a lot of the work that we do here on the land was my level of fitness and the amount of strength that I needed to be able to survive. And then when I got into the jits, that's added the new one, but that's also allowed me to kind of adjust my training because I have a blade to kind of sharpen it against. I know that, the aerobic capacity work that we do on the Echo bikes and we're really pushing, plays good dividends when I get to the mat. And I think what's fascinating, especially about this technology, is you're looking at adding a different modality that we haven't necessarily seen on a mass scale. So, since the Russians wrote the Russian training manuals, people have understood Olympic lifting and plyometrics and, strength training. The S&C models are really good. Lift something heavy, move with speed and dynamic. If you want to sprint, Charlie Francis figured that shit out many, many years ago, right? You're either running as fast as you can or you're doing recovery runs. Nobody trains in the no man's land. So I think in terms of the training models, we've got that shit figured out pretty well. We understand the mechanisms of hypertrophy. We know how to get people strong. We know how to get them explosive. We know how to make people the best versions of themselves. And there's a bunch of different levers to pull. And I think for a long time, when those levers get maxed out, people, figured like, oh, it's got to be something systemic, right? Is it a diet thing? Now, do I got to change my macros? Do I got to eat more protein? Do I got to eat less? And, do I got to take, performance enhancers? Do I need to optimize my blood? Like we had a guy on the podcast recently who was a big peptide guy. And the amount of not performance enhancers, but the amount of enhancement that this individual who's, 10 plus years younger than you is taking was pretty interesting. And he made it all seem just so easy. You just take this stuff and you're jacked and you're in great shape. But one of the contentions, and we talked about this on a podcast with Ben Skutnik, who's one of the guys that works with me, the people are so quick to go to the drugs. They're so quick to go to the GLP-1s and a lot of these other things to mask the fact that they haven't done the work. Right? They haven't given themselves enough chance. They haven't given themselves enough opportunity to create the habits they need that make for sustainability. And I think what's cool about Stratosphere and what I saw was that you're looking at a completely new, different modality to drive human performance in a new and interesting way that people haven't looked at before. And like,
yeah, and doing it non-invasively.
Well, yeah. And when you get into these value props, And, after we talked yesterday, thinking about like the technology and how people are using it, and more importantly, like how do you sell this to people? The idea of ramping up human performance by creating a new modality, and we don't know what the ceiling on this could be. I think we know pretty well what the ceiling is in terms of like lifting weights and training. Like if a guy's pretty good, how much we can bring him up, how much we can improve, body composition. There's a lot of these kind of levers that that, if a guy's VO2 max is 60, as he ages, coming down, we can keep it at and kind of push it a little bit, but he's never going to be, Lance Armstrong in the high 80s and the 90s. Unless he takes a bunch of drugs, like EPO and whatnot. But with the Stratosphere, the thing that I was most intrigued by is we don't necessarily know what the upper ceiling on this is. You have this technology and it's paying dividends, and you're seeing these performance enhancing effects on the athletes. The guys are feeling better. Their VO2 maxes are up. Red blood cells. I mean, all the physiology that you're getting into. There is a physiological effect that you are tapping into. But we don't know what it is, or we don't know what the ceiling of it is. Because, as you've gotten into it, I know you've used it probably more than anybody else on the planet. But being able to bring in, let's say, 18-year-old Olympic athlete and be able to, get the volume of training that you're doing. And it could be something where he's lifting weights and then he's going in there and he's doing his active recovery work, or he's doing intervals on the bike, or he's in there hitting the heavy bag, like you said. I just think that we haven't accessed everything yet. And we don't know what that next kind of peak of human evolution will be like. What'll push us there? When we had that guy, Jay Campbell, on the podcast, he was talking about one of the new GLP-1s, even though they're all GLP-1s, he was calling them GLP 3, 4, and 5, but one of them's like a 5 pathway where it's going to, hit glucagon, it's going to hit ghrelin, and it's going to hit IGF-1. So that now they're going to have all of these pathways where it's going to be able to control your diet, be able to control your blood sugar, it's going to be able to control your hunger, and it's also going to be able to ramp up IGF-1. So now you're going to be able to control all these things and have a synergistic muscle building effect. And then he got into this like myostatin thing. And he's like, we're on the verge of seeing 350 pound bodybuilders that are 3% body fat. And I was like, that's not very useful. I mean, I guess it is for bodybuilding, but how are we, I'm on the other side of this thing. Like there's a whole aesthetic side of like the performance and wellness and training and, bodybuilding and that. And while I think that as a skilled coach, you have to know something about it, because, bodybuilders have figured out how to make bigger, stronger athletes, or just bigger, more muscular athletes. But in terms of like athletic performance, and what you're doing, it's in a completely different vein. Like you're not getting somebody ready for a Mr. Olympia or a local bodybuilding show. You're talking about, training bobsledders and Olympic athletes and people to win and go out and be the best in the world. Like I just recently saw the article with Christian McCaffrey and the NFL guys. Like they're looking to reduce the margin of error by any means necessary, and being able to tap into technologies like you've created, I think is really the next frontier, because I think we've exhausted just about everything else. So now we have to have outside the box thinkers that are coming in and creating these different pieces of tech that allow us to push human evolution.
Yeah. Christian McCaffrey and Bijan Robinson absolutely couldn't get enough of the chamber. I mean, for recovery and how hard they were working, their track workouts, the weights that they were pushing, the Kaiser equipment, the coaching they were getting for faster rebounding on their running. Like it was a hell of a camp for them, both of them. And what was really cool about that article is I brought up, you'll appreciate this, the writer Mark Ramadi, I think his name was. He was telling me, he said a couple of things about them training. What's it like with them? What's going on? Is there animosity? Is there tension between them? I go, you know what? It's like the movie Brian's Song. You know that movie, right?
Yeah.
Right? Brian Piccolo, Gale Sayers, right? Like I said, these guys are on opposite sides. They're on different teams. They're going to be playing against each other. But I said, I think I said in the article, it's kind of like Michael Jordan telling Magic Johnson what he's going to do. So he has to come up with something else in the moment. And they trained hard together, dude. They competed to who could push the most weight, velocity, strength, speed. But at the end of the day, as hard as they trained, they were just bettering each other in a really great way. It was really quite cool to see. And then a lot of the time, they would end and do recovery with Stratosphere, right? To enhance their lungs, their brains, their bodies, the enormous expansion, contraction of every cell simultaneously, giving them kind of a recovery thing. I did that, with LeBron James. He came in and I did a whole thing with him on mainly it was recovery. Here, let me show you that because that's a cool picture. It's not every day you get a LeBron James to come in.
No.
Just
He's
the big man.
He got himself a little bit of trouble. They came out, I guess they tied a bunch of performance enhancers to him. I don't know if you saw that recently.
Is that recent?
Yeah, let me look it up.
Yep, he should have stuck with the chamber then, dude. He went away. He needed to come back and use that, but he loved the chamber.
Yeah, so there was a little bit. It came out just probably 2 weeks ago that there's a claim going around that LeBron was taking performance enhancers over the course of his career, and he was accused of doping. So, I mean, who knows? I mean, could he, could he have, would have? I don't know. I mean, as a guy played for what's he played, Jacob, like 23 years?
Yeah.
I hope he's taking something.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long time to be playing. That's a tough sport, right? A lot of pounding, a lot of games.
Yeah, a lot of games. I mean,
the impact is nothing like football, but it's nonstop. It's a lot of pushing.
Oh yeah, no. So, but yeah, I think this is the next piece.
I'll have to call his buddy. I'll have to call Maverick Carter and say, get LeBron back in the chamber.
Yeah, he needs two of them.
Get this. I've got the non-invasive, performance enhancing drug, and it's your own. I think your body makes the best drugs that are out there. And again, it goes back to, the right environment. You put people in the right environment, the sunshine, the grounding. I mean, how long did it take people to catch on to grounding? Meryl and I have been doing that for forever.
Well,
working with a company called Earthing. It sounds like hocus pocus, right? You put your feet on the ground. You have 3,000 pores on the bottom of your feet. What do you think that my one buddy said this to me? I love this. Walking barefoot through the mountains. He's like, is dirt really dirty if it's real dirt? And you're like, nope, it's minerals and they can get absorbed. It's pretty cool. Well, I love barefoot. I love it.
Well, think about, the grounding thing always sounded super hippy dippy Berkeley to me, because obviously I went to Berkeley and there was always hippies around, with shoes off, playing ultimate Frisbee. But when somebody explained to me I think it was called the Schumann resonance, that the earth is struck by electricity thousands of times per minute, and that this the electricity piece is kind of the heartbeat of the earth, and it kind of pulses with all this electricity. And you think for the entirety of human existence, we probably have slept on the ground at some point, right? For the majority of it. I mean, it wasn't until recently, within the last, let's say, 100 years, that we started pouring concrete foundations and putting hardwood floors down and sleeping up on beds. But for the entirety of human existence, we probably slept on the ground, or at least under something that was on the ground. I mean, I don't think beds and really of the, maybe the last couple 100 years. And then the majority of people bathed in running water. So one of the charges that they explained, especially with the grounding piece, is actually bathing in live running water. Now we tend to bathe in still water that comes out of a water heater or whatnot, but very few people are really bathing in natural springs. It's not like they're going down to the river and taking a bath and getting out. So you got to think that the combination of not sleeping on the ground, probably not walking on the ground, not being out in nature with direct sunlight, and then also not showering or bathing in actual live running water. Those are how that grounding thing, when I kind of looked at it, I was like, that actually makes a ton of sense just from an evolutionary perspective.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Polluted air as well. You combine all those are the essentials. The water, the air, the earth. I mean, they're essential. Yeah, the water makes a lot of sense to me. The moving water, live water. We have something called a Vitalizer Plus that we use. It's got a magnet and it spins. It's got a mineral tray, picks up the nanoparticles of the minerals, and believe it or not, we put distilled water in there, and you measure it and it raises up into the sevens. It starts out in the fives, pH, and it oxygenates it, mineralizes it. And they don't make claims on the oxygen. The oxygen lasts for a minute and then dissipates, but the structure of the water maintains for like 3 hours from being in there. It's quite unique. I always thought about water being, we're made up of such a high percentage of it. You better be taking in some good stuff. And then you are what you think, right? If you're thinking negative thoughts all the time, it's going to break your cells down. The positive thoughts, thinking of the life that you love and you're grateful for, and there's so much mental game in it. We're talking about a lot of physiological stuff, but Meryl and I are big in breathing and meditation, and just not doing anything, sitting and doing nothing can be some of the most profound stuff. And it's a hard thing to do because you always have a list of things that you want to do. I got to do this. I have to make this call. I got to send this email. I get on the phone. I have a text. I have a podcast. But if you could just take a couple of minutes here and there through the day just to sit and do nothing, and I think it's the way to go. I remember when I was a kid, raised Irish Catholic. God is everywhere was a conundrum for me. Boy, I couldn't figure out how could God be in everything and be everywhere. How is that even possible? And then somebody told me, nothingness is the isness, is the Buddhist creed. And I was like, what does that mean? And I broke that down. So all of the, you and I are both made up of 99% space, as is that microphone, as is, the chair that you're sitting on. Everything has to be made up of a certain amount of space in order to exist on the physical plane. If that's the truth, then 99% of everything that goes on here, you can't touch, taste, hear, smell, or see. And in that empty space, that's the connection of everything. So, I feel like God's everywhere in that space, if you will, or the energy of the universe is in that space, and that's what connects everything together. And in that space, you have free will to do whatever you want with it and change it and create new stuff. And it's pretty cool if you can look at it like that. And then the last but not least on that 99% space, if you are made up of 99% space, and I am as well, and we're 99% the same, if I hurt you, wouldn't I be hurt myself?
Yeah.
Pretty profound way to look at things.
Yeah.
Really is. The
idea, I mean, really what you're talking about is gratitude. I had Matt Vincent on the podcast, and he's really big into this gratitude because I think it's very easy. And I am guilty of this 100%. Like, I will be the first to raise my hand, where you get into these negative feedback loops. And you start looking around, and there's the, if only I'd done this, if only I'd done that, I could have done this better. I could have, and you're in this constant,
shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Yeah, there's this constant feedback loop, and it's like all you're doing is beating yourself up for things that you can't change. And it becomes,
we call it shooting on yourself.
Yeah,
shooting on yourself,
and it becomes extremely overwhelming. And I think like there gets to a point where you're like, how do I throw this off? Is it, do I make a change? What do I do? I mean, do I go take a long walk off a short bridge and just fucking end it all? I mean, there's a feeling of hopelessness that people get into because, and then you also have to think too, we've never been this interconnected. Like, I think about before social media, I think we lived in our own little bubbles. You kind of managed your stuff. And now the fact that we have so many more touch points, there's this constant feeling of like FOMO, or that everybody's doing better, or, I haven't done enough and everybody's outworking me. Everybody's business is better. Everybody's here. And it just gets to be kind of this negative feedback loop where you feel that, I'm no good at what I'm doing. And it'd probably be better if I wasn't here. And I think like those little bits of darkness, make you have to, go back. And then like, Matt was talking about, and I'm kind of paraphrasing from him, this idea of gratitude and understanding that, you have your health, you have your family, you have loved ones. I mean, you have to start and realize that like, here are the solid things that I have. Here's what I'm grateful for. And being upset about things that I can't control, or feeling like this is out of my control, is just a part of life and part of existence. And so I think, like you said, one of my favorite movies is The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise. And that moment towards the kind of the end where he goes up and Ken Watanabe is in his I think is in like his ancestors' temple, and he's talking about, you know, beauty in every moment, that, you know, if he spent his life searching for a perfect cherry blossom, it wouldn't be a wasted life, that he's searching for beauty in every moment. And then Tom Cruise makes this kind of like under breath, like, oh, that is Bushido. But I mean, that's what he's really talking about. He's talking about like simplicity and beauty and like taking advantage of what's in front of you and not feeling like you have to be somewhere else, but being present in the moment. And I think we're doing a really shitty job of that. I am doing a shitty job of that. Most people I know are doing a shitty job of that. And it probably has to do with calendars and texting. And, you know, all of a sudden, you know, I'm sitting here, you know, having this conversation with you, and I'm sure there's texts and emails about what I'm doing tomorrow and Friday and Saturday and Sunday. And like my next 2 weeks is already fucking booked. And I'll go look and be like, shit, what about me? When do I get to go do something that is me? Like, and I really appreciate the fact that you're up in Idaho. You get to go to some bitchin' ranch, hang out with your cool girlfriend, and just take time and go out and walk and do your best version of you.
Yeah, it's so important. You know how hard I'm working on Stratosphere. It's been a beast, man. I've been 13 years into it. I'm over $13 million into it. You're talking to a guy who never raised capital, but now has raised capital and getting into, you know, corporations and convertible notes and you know, investors and how things work and projections, and it's a lot. And you know, I was a pretty simple guy before I got into this. Loved health, wellness. I mean, I got a lottery ticket when I was in college, you know, getting a job as a model. You know, what does that mean? It's like I'm modeling, you know, some girl gave me a card and said I could make money, get my pictures taken. I thought she was out of her mind. I threw the card away. She came up to me a couple more times, once after once in the summer and then once around Thanksgiving when I was back from college. So I just did it, and next thing you know, I did a Nike ACG campaign, and within 6 months, and I'm going to school to be a vet. I I ended up on the beach in Las Hadas, Mexico, with Victoria's Secret models being paid $1,000 a day to be the token guy in the background.
Mm.
I was like, really? No, this is really happening, you know. And I just kept working. I was the SolarFlex guy for a decade after Frank Zane and Arnold like signed on to that way back when. And I had you know, and this, I started feeling weird getting paid for getting my pictures taken. I thought it was like no way to make money. But when I did the stunt work, I was earning it, right? Whether I was doing high falls climbing or speaking on television and then doing a base jump off a rock, whatever it is that came up. But I hit, you know, it was like the lottery ticket. But my downtime, this was amazing. No chasing girls, serial monogamous, very long relationships, almost married a couple times kind of thing. Meryl and I have been together 16 years, going on 17. And I took time to myself. I was always climbing. I've driven across the country 87 times.
Mm.
I've spent so much time in national parks. I spent times with people that I'd never met. I picked up hitchhikers and met people and hung out with people and climbed with people I didn't know, and you know, mountain biking through the Rockies. And I got to do so many things that had a lot to do with taking this space. Now, the reason why I was able to do this, John, I never got married. No house, kids, no mortgage. My grandmother said when I was a kid, there were 7 of us, right? Siblings and cousins that lived right next door to each other. My dad's brother's kids and my sister and myself and my grandparents, and everybody lived in the same neighborhood. They said that I would be married first and have the most kids.
Ah.
I'm the only one that didn't get married and don't have kids. And I love kids. I'm really great with them. My dad was like the perfect dad, like ever. Motorcycles and skiing and just fun stuff all the time, and just teaching me things about how to build cars and the stuff that dads, you know, teach. Or at least that's the way it was when I grew up. But I, you know, I kept getting these gigs. And the other thing, kind of funny, I didn't really age like the rest of my friends because I paid attention to health, wellness, fitness, performance, how to get better. I slept.
Yeah.
I'm still sleeping 9 hours a night. I get 9 hours of sleep. People are like, you get 9 hours. And I'm like, yeah, you just go to bed early and get up early. You know, I got in with the circadian clock for a long time. Now, I got knocked off of that doing this business. So I can really appreciate the stress that you go through and everything that you're trying to do. And I finally saw why people would get heart attacks and have strokes and have all these disease things happen, it's because the stress, the cortisol levels. One of the things you brought up earlier was, performance enhancing drugs and people not, doing the work. Most people have the same like testosterone levels. They just have high cortisol levels that negate it. On top of which they have dirty receptors. Their bodies are plaqued up and sort of mucked up from the air, the water, the stuff that you're talking about. So they're not functioning. They need to cleanse. They need to eat better. They need to stop doing the processed sugars and the foods and the stuff. There's so much to do with it. But there's so much to be said about what you just said about being grateful, taking time to yourself, counting the blessings you have. Dude, what are the odds of you and I sitting here having a conversation? You know how many relatives had to live and die to get you sitting here right now with me?
Yeah.
I mean, dude, we're a miracle. The movie, you talked about the movie Amistad. Remember that?
Yeah. Well, I was
with Matt McConaughey. He was the lawyer for the dude that got chained up on the boat. In one part of the movie, he brought up that he's going to be fine and everything's going to be okay in court because his ancestors are with him. Everybody that came and had gone are there to work with him because he's the reason why they all lived. You're the reason why all those people existed. He put it in that context. Really profound. Like I thought about that one moment and I was like, wow. I said, Mariel and I happened to be on, we got on Oprah when she had the OWN network and she sat there and talked to us from her house. And she said that her parents slept together once in the back of a 56 Chevy and she was the result. And I go, and how great is that? She actually was saying it in a negative way. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, do you know how many people you've helped because your parents had that one moment? I go, what are the odds of you being here? Yeah. She goes, the sperm and the egg. I go, 40 million to 1. She slaps me 5. I slap her 5 back. She said to me, what moves you more than anything? I said, it might be inappropriate for me to talk about what moves me more than anything. She said, seriously, just tell me. I said, this place, who we are as human beings, what we're capable of doing. And I said, it's fucking amazing. She stood up and started yelling, fucking amazing. She was like, had her hands over her head. It was funny as shit, but it was Super Soul Sunday. Obviously, that's not in there. But it's exciting, dude, that we're here and that we're able to do what we do. It's insane. Like this place is a miracle. Like think about everything that goes on. That's how I see life.
Well, when I met your girlfriend, she went over and introduced herself. And the only thing I looked at her and all of a sudden what popped up in my head was the Naked Gun 33 1/3. So your girl was in the Naked Gun with Leslie Nielsen. I don't know if you knew that. Meryl Hemingway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's an actress, right? So when she walked in and like we were like super, super nice, like not pretentious, didn't say anything. But growing up, I was always a Jim Abrams, Leslie Nielsen, Airplane, Naked Gun. Like we watched those movies on repeat. So like Naked Gun 2.5 and like all the different ones. And I realized like looking at it, I was like, I think that's the chick from the Naked Gun. And so when we got in the car, I had to Google it, and I was like, "Yep, Meryl Hemingway, that's the one." And I mean, obviously, she's been in a bunch of other much better movies. I mean, I think she was.
Yeah. Dude, I can tell you a couple of funny things. This is Hollywood stuff that like everybody doesn't know, but kind of knows about some of the stuff. A League of Their Own. Mariel's part was Gina Davis. They wrote the part for Mariel. She was working on Civil Wars. Penny Marshall wouldn't wait for the 2 weeks because it would hold up production. But that part was written for Mariel. And another one, Lauren Holly, Dumb and Dumber. She played the really pretty girl that they both had. Yeah, that was written for Mariel. She got the script. She read the script and thought it was stupid, so she didn't do it. I was like, oh my God, you don't know. You just don't know what you don't know. That stuff comes up all the time. Tom Selleck was supposed to be Harrison Ford in Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was written for him.
Wow. Yeah. There's been a bunch of different movies that I've seen her in. She was in John Candy and Delirious. So like a lot, Superman 2. I mean,
Delirious was great. Delirious is great. I love that. John Candy's she said he was one of the nicest human beings you'd ever met.
So
and everybody said that about him. He was a good guy.
So Judge Reinhold, who played with him in Stripes, was on, I think, Rick Eisen's show, and I watched it as I was flying back from. I just got back from the Hall of Fame. Jared Allen got inducted in the Hall of Fame, so I was flying back, and I was watching Rick Eisen's show, and they had Judge Reinhold on there, and he was talking about Stripes, and so that he called it like, this is where I went to college. I went to comedy college at Stripes. He was a young kid. John Candy was there. It was Bill Murray and Harold Ramis and these guys. And the movie was originally written for Cheech and Chong, and Cheech and Chong it was called Cheech and Chong Go to the Army, and then that movie didn't pan out, and so they hit up Bill Murray. And he ended up being like, well, it's a buddy movie, and got Harold Ramis in it. And so then that's how they brought it out. But they had John Candy, and they filmed it in a dry town in Kentucky. And, Candy's from Canada. And he's like, what do you mean a dry town? No alcohol? He's like, so he got a hold of the Teamsters. They brought over beer, and he had a separate room with a bathtub full of Molson ice. And they, would go in there and drink beer. But Judge Reinhold was going, and he was telling all these John Candy stories about, just like different things that they would come out and write. And what they would do is the actors would go in and write separately, and then they would come out and present. And he just said, he's like, man, it was probably the greatest comedy experience I've ever had. I mean, to be around those guys. But he said John Candy was one of the best human beings he'd ever been around. So the story checks out.
Yeah. I mean, some of the things she told me. I mean, he was so popular back then, dude. You were in your teens. That I think I mentioned this to you once before about Headspace, when the 49ers were playing the Bengals and they needed a touchdown to win, to clinch and go to the Super Bowl, and there was just a few seconds left. It's a famous thing, and they were pretty far out, like they had to go 30 yards or something, and no time on the clock. And Joe Montana, they were in the huddle, and everybody's looking to him for something, and he said, "Hey, you guys, did you look over the bench at the 50-yard line, John Candy sitting there?" And everybody in the huddle turned and looked, and they saw him. And he wanted to get their heads out of the game to just think about that guy. He was that popular back then. Like, he was so famous for a minute, Uncle Buck and all the movies that he did.
Yeah, the best.
That was pretty profound for him to do, because everybody didn't think 1 second about football. They probably thought about their favorite movies or how they see him, and then looked up there. Yeah. Anyway, obviously the game-winning touchdown came from that. I always look at that like that's a really good, somebody who's leading the team to get people to calm down. Probably dropped all their cortisol levels, and they thought about nothing else but that for just a few seconds, and then got back in the game. But yeah, man, he was a good dude. Merrill still talks about it from that perspective.
Yeah, cool. 43 years old. He was filming a movie in 1994. I remember in Durango, Mexico, called Wagons East, and ended up having a massive heart attack in his sleep. He was more than 375 pounds and a pretty severe.
How much?
375, and pretty severe alcoholic. Wow. So he's born in Canada. But, he was just battled alcoholism and, ate too much and was just too heavy. But, made it to 43. So, it's funny, when he passed away, 43 might as well have been 4003. And now that I'm older than 43 feels so young. The fact that he didn't take care of himself, but that was also his character. You think about Uncle Buck, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. All of those, he was always such a comedic genius. But sad to see him go. But
how much did you love the Trains and Planes character? That guy was such a good guy.
It's still my best. When he's like polka polka polka, we had a couple big hits, sold about 36 records. As a kid growing up, the amount of that kind of Naked Gun, Leslie Nielsen, John Candy, Stripes, that humor, that was, we had VHS tapes. There was nothing on TV, so we would, either buy or get VHS tapes, and my brothers and I would watch the same movies over and over again. Uncle Buck, the flipping the quarter, and hey, here's a quarter, go downtown and get a rat to gnaw that thing off your face. These classic lines are the foundation, the webbing of my youth, and just feel very, very fortunate to have grown up in a time where, we got to watch those on shitty VHS tapes, and there wasn't this feeling of streaming where you watch a movie and the movie was so good that you come back and watch it the next day because this is all you got. It's like
It's so fun. It's so funny because Meryl says that. Why do guys watch movies over and over again? I go, I don't know, man, but we like them, and we could verbatim talk about different scenes.
my
That
wife
scene that
can't.
you're talking about, gnaw that thing, get a rat to gnaw
Yeah.
that thing off your face. That was so great. And she was saying bad things about the kid being a
Yeah.
dreamer, and he was like, she's 6 years old.
Yeah, he's like, and then he meets
it's so
hags
good.
like you, and you stomp the life out of him. I mean, just incredible stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think it's my wife asked us about this, and I know my brother's wife has asked me about this numerous times. She's like, how can you guys laugh as hard at these lines the same way you did as the first time? And I was like, because it's still funny. Just because a joke is funny once doesn't mean it's not funny. Whereas I think for women, if a joke's funny once, it might be a little less funny the second time. No.
Yeah, no, I don't like it over and over again. No woman does. Men, this is where men and women are different, and I'm sorry, but they just are. Like a day off for you and me is like, we're not going to move unless we have to eat or go to the bathroom. We're going to sit still. We don't move a muscle. We don't twinge. We're just barely breathing, whether it's a football game or movies that we're watching and coming in and out of sleep and eating. Women just aren't made to do that. Mary wants to clean the house and go to brunch. And I'm like, we could eat eggs here for $5. You want to go spend $50 on brunch? I just want to lay down. We need one day a week of nothing.
Yeah.
And part of that one day a week of nothing is watching our favorite movies. And I think it just helps us regenerate and become back the way we were. I don't know. I love it though. I'm that guy, like all the way. Like everything you're saying just rings direct home.
Yeah. Well, ping me your location. Maybe I'll just show up. I'll fucking wholesale everything and just show up and we can.
Dude, you would lose your mind up here. You would love this place.
Well,
Meryl and I are building a hot springs. We're building a hot springs up here. We just got the water rights, so it's going to be called. Are you ready? Pretty simple. Hemingway Hot Springs. Now it doesn't get much better than that.
It's
It's amazing. It's 13 pools.
I am pretty handy. So I can do dirt work, I can weld, I can fab, I can. So I'm a pretty
Dude, next summer you're coming up and you're helping me put together the hot springs. It's one of our favorite things up here that we're working on. It's going to be immense. I mean, immense. It's going to be a great wellness, performance, longevity center with hot springs. The water is 17,000 feet deep, no tritium, which is nuclear fallout. And it's got really special minerals. It's like some of the cleanest and best and greatest. And it's 159 coming out of the ground. And you ready? 43,000 gallons an hour.
Wow.
So all the pools are going to naturally empty 3 times a day. So you always have these really clean pools, and the pools are going to be separate. There'll be like enough for 5 people, but they'll be separate. You have your own section, so you can book a pool Tuesday, pool number 9. It's great. A lot's gone on. We've been working on this for years. It's like one of our favorite things that we're doing. We just want to have like nature around everybody and envelop into the water, and Stratosphere and stuff will all be there. But
we lost him. Right at the end as he's ranting. Fuck. Don't turn it off. We're going to bring him back. Hold on.
John, I was saying to you that nice.
Yeah.
Got some guns going. I was saying to you, Jimmy Stewart did the movie It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
And so almost everybody has seen that movie. He was on Johnny Carson before he passed talking about movies, and he brought that movie up. He said that since 1938, he received tens of thousands of letters from people saying that they did not kill themselves because they watched that movie.
Oh,
I was like, you know how awesome that is? So the stuff that we're talking about, John Candy, makes us happy. So that's the magic of movies, that it makes you think that anything is possible, and it is, and it also puts you in a place where you feel understood or heard, or the emotions can come out that you want. But yeah, when I heard that, I was like, that's the reason why you make movies, to make a difference in people's lives. But
sure.
How magical is that? Like tens of thousands of letters, and he answered every letter since 1938.
Oh, every
letter.
I love hearing stuff like that. But yeah, no, yeah. I'm super handy. Like I said, I can do dirt work, I can weld, I can fab, like I can build stuff. So I got a ranch of my own.
You said it in front. You said it in front of a lot of people. How many people listen to this?
2, like my mom, maybe 2 or 3 others. But maybe more.
So I only have to call.
Yeah, there could be.
I only have to call your mom. What are the numbers?
We get probably anywhere from we don't get as many downloads on YouTube, but we do get a ton of listens on all the other platforms. But what the cool part is we cut all this content and then we use it on the Everyday Athlete on SI page. So people are going to see it there. And then what we do is we'll drive it back to the bigger podcast, but we can get 20,000 downloads. So there's going to be a lot of people listen. And, but yeah,
so
no,
you made a promise to 20,000 people. I'm just letting you know.
I did. I'm in. But what we were joking about is about 13 weeks ago, one of our friends had really let himself get out of shape. And so he kind of ponied up with our other friend and was like, man, I really like to do some shared suffering. Let's see if we could do a little bit of challenge. So we put it together. I sucked some other people in and we've been doing this kind of fitness challenge. And I was laughing because I'm down almost 20 pounds. I don't know. I don't think I lost much muscle, but I wear 38s on shorts, which is kind of interesting for a dude my size to have a 38-inch waist. But I had to start wearing a belt on the 38s. And I was joking with Jacob that I'm like, we got like 2 or 3 weeks left on this thing. And the fact that I had to throw a belt on 38-inch shorts is not good. My wife even said to me today, she's like, are your shorts too big? And I was like, I think so. And she's like, God damn, dude. So, yeah, I got a couple more weeks on this thing.
Are you looking to gain weight? Are you looking to lose weight? What are you doing? What do you weigh?
Well, right now I'm like 261, 262. So when I met you, I was probably closer to 275, 280.
Wow.
So
that's good. That's good weight loss.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think I dropped any muscle. Actually, I think I put on some. But I mean, my jits is better. Everything's better. It's funny that for the most part, I usually wear like a 38 or a 40 and, I can't wear the 40s and the 38s. I need a belt now. And, I would normally wear shorts for that. But like all my clothes are big.
That's good.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's just, it's funny that
you'll if you were able to carry the weight that you were carrying and you dropped and you're not, you still have the quality muscle, it's only going to make you more fit.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
it's great. You'll probably, like you said, you're moving better.
Well, when you lift weights for 35 years with the singular focus of being as big and strong as possible, and then all of a sudden you continue to lift weights, but you just do it with a caloric restriction, and then we were doing a bunch of aerobic work just because, like we were talking about earlier in the podcast, mitochondrial density decreases as we age, and one of the ways you keep mitochondrial density and you keep the mitochondria healthy is by having a large aerobic base. So I've been pushing a ton of aerobic work, been doing that first thing in the morning, fasted, going back, and then been eating, obviously in caloric restriction. And what's been neat is I've actually been PRing a bunch of my lifts. The only problem is it's been fucking with my sleep a little bit because I'm hungry when I go to bed. So I haven't been able to sleep as much as I like. I'm pretty good between 7 and 8 hours. I've been getting probably 6 hours. So I'll go to bed at like 9:30, get in bed, sleep by 10. And at like 4:30, 5 a.m., it's like somebody kicks me in the pants. And so I'm kind of looking forward to being able to
doing magnesium? You doing magnesium and stuff before you go to sleep?
Yeah. I take magnesium and do salt. I take Doc Parsley sleep remedy, and do vitamin D and a few other things. And so what about the 3-2-1 rule? No food 3 hours, no drink 2 hours, no blue light 1 hour. That's a pretty good rule. Yeah, I need to kick the blue light. I'll tend to, like if I sit down and watch some TV or finish up what I got to do on the computer, and then, I'll go in and brush my teeth and go to bed. But I will not check my phone before bed. Like once I'm in bed, I don't sit there and fucking scroll on my phone. But I've been going, right. I try to, like, my goal is to get in bed before 10. Right. And then what I do is I kind of lay down, take a bunch of deep breaths, and then knock out. The problem is normally I sleep till about, if I'm in bed at 9:30, I'm asleep by 10. I usually am up at right around, like I'll wake up, 6:58, 6:05. Like I usually wake up right around 6 o'clock, and I'll get, maybe 7.5, 8 hours, 7 to 8 hours, let's say when on the sleep tracking. But I've been hitting that same thing, man. And it just probably clicked off for like 2 hours. So I've been getting pretty good at about 6 and, waking up at about 4:30, 4:20, 4:10. And I am, the 6 hours of sleep, I think, is weighing on me a little bit. So I need to find a way to like either eat some carbs or do something. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to eat most of my protein.
What about
early
naps? Do you drag during the day and then can you hit a 20-minute nap? Is that possible?
No, I mean, if I go nap, I'm more of the type of person just to kind of like just sit down and kind of close my eyes and just think. I'm not much of a napper. I mean, I used to nap when I was in the NFL, but I mean, there's a lot to do. And, but you know, like after this, I got another call. I got to go lift some weights and try to take over the world, dude. But yeah, I mean,
I got it. At 12 o'clock, I'm talking about buying a building in Westlake through some Maha stuff, you know, for us to do a 22,000 square foot space of wellness, performance, and longevity with a really cool group of people. But yeah, it never stops. That's the thing. Like I was saying to you before this, because I had that amazing lifestyle, I got to have so much time to myself. You know, it was just unbelievable how much time I had.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, do you regret it? Do you wish you had stayed on the same path?
Do I wish I stayed on the path? Meryl and I both have pensions from SAG, from all the work that we've done. We could live the quietest life ever with very little money because we have enough with our pensions to support this little place and stay here. But I'm like you, I have the drive. I want to make a difference. It doesn't mean that I don't want to get off the train once in a while and not do anything. Sure. I need a little bit more of it for sure. You know, I created a life of that, you know, back when I was a kid, and I definitely miss it. You know, I'm going to go to Yosemite this week. I don't have to check with anybody. I just go. Sure. But now I got to check with a lot of people. You have a business, you have stuff, you know, it's that. But yeah, so I do miss it. I don't need it 24/7, but you definitely need reprieve and breaks and that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, dude, hey man, before we get dumped off again, we're going to button it up there, but dude, Bobby, great to fucking have you on. Had just an amazing time seeing your place over in Malibu and seeing your tech. And I've been thinking a lot about it. And, man, I can't wait to see your place up in Idaho, and hopefully we can connect sooner than later. But as always, dude, it was an enlightening conversation. Thanks for coming on.
We'll hook up. We'll hook up more, man. We think alike in a lot of ways. I really love some of the things, the analogies, and some of the stuff that you talked about. I think it's fantastic. It's great that you're able to put things like this out in the world to inspire people to take better care of themselves and you know, look at things in life of what matters. You know, what matters most.
Awesome. Well, and if people want to find you, is there Instagram page, social media?
Dude, I'm the guy who hides.
I know.
I'm the hidden guy. I think the last time I put something up on Instagram was 4 years ago. I'm being told by all these new guys that stepping in the company, marketing is going to be a big thing, and I got to start doing this. So you have me on the last time I was on a podcast was with Eddie Ift. He does podcasts, or he did, and it's probably
he introduced us
4 years ago.
Yeah, he's the one that was a connection for us. Remember, Eddie F reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you talk to my buddy Bobby?"
Yeah. So I did his podcast like 4 years ago or something. He tries to have me on once in a while. I don't know. I'm so busy, but I think I'm going to make it a part of it. Meryl and I, believe it or not, had a podcast in 2009. We had over 1 million people listening. It was through Hay House. We should have just kept going and kept that. It was cool. We got a lot of. Because it was Hay House, they had people from around the world that would ask us questions, and it was kind of fun doing it as a couple. But yeah, finding me, people are going to have to call you to find me. That's pretty much how it goes.
Well, we'll make it work, dude. So thanks for tuning in to another episode of Power Athlete Radio. Hey there, Power Athlete Nation. Big shout out to all the heavy hitters who stuck around till the final whistle. If you've been soaking in the knowledge bombs and epic tales we've been dropping for free, here's your chance to be a game changer. Swing by klfi.com/powerathlete and toss a few bucks our way to keep the podcast fueled and firing on all cylinders. That's ko-fi.com/powerathlete. Your support makes a difference. See ya.